Welcome back, Money Growth Academy. As always, we've got a lot going on in the stimulus proposal world. I'm starting to lose track of all the proposals out there, so I'm sure you are. Now, over the weekend, Senator Mitt Romney from Utah introduced a new stimulus proposal called Patriot Pay. So we're going to talk about what that means for you. Now, I've taken the time to do all the heavy lifting, reading through the proposal and doing the research, and I'll share with you why I don't think this is the bill that people are waiting on. Now, I'll break down the nuts and bolts of this bill and share what I like about this bill and what I absolutely don't like about it and why I think we need something better and deserve something better. Now, many of us YouTubers are talking about these new bills, but let me know down in the comments if you've even received your first stimulus payment. Now, it's frustrating to me that so many bills are being introduced by members of Congress and we can't even get the first one right and get money to those that desperately need it. Now, right now, Congress is in the process of outlining phase 4 of the stimulus relief package. From both sides of the aisle, they've mentioned that they're looking at a variety of bills to include to provide the people with further economic assistance. Now, a lot of these senators are aware that the $1,200 stimulus payment was not nearly enough. If you don't believe that the $1,200 stimulus payment did enough for you or the rest of the country, hit that like button for me. Now, it's important that we cover all the bills being presented and you're aware of them, even if they sound silly or even implausible, because more than likely what will happen is they'll borrow concepts from a variety of proposed bills to create some kind of Frankenstein bill that will then get passed into law and have a direct effect on you. So make sure to subscribe because we'll be breaking down all the proposed bills from the Rent and Mortgage Cancellation Act, the Emergency Money for the People Act, which would provide a $2,000 monthly stimulus check for up to 1 year, the Getting America Back to Work Act, and the Boost Act that provides a one-time payment of $2,000, then $1,000 a month. All these bills and more will be covered in future videos, so make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on anything going on with all the stimulus proposal and what it means for you. All right, let's get into this newly proposed bill called Patriot Pay that was introduced by Senator Mitt Romney of Utah, who, fun fact, also was one of the first senators to propose that the government write a check to all Americans to help them deal with the financial fallout, so you can thank them for that, I guess. Now, the idea behind this bill is to help compensate essential workers who are necessarily subject to greater risk of COVID-19. Now, Patriot Pay would provide a temporary bonus of $12 per hour for frontline workers. That's a nice little boost, especially if you're on minimum wage. Now, currently, Congress has passed nearly $3 trillion in relief to boost the economy, including about $600 extra each week for up to 4 months for those who have filed for unemployment, which some members of Congress argued against, saying that it would mean some workers would actually benefit more from not working than returning to their jobs. Now, the idea is to make sure that essential workers in critical industries who are risking exposure to the virus receive greater compensation than the unemployment insurance rate, which I see making sense in what they're trying to do. Now, the bill asks that Congress allow critical employers to provide Patriot Pay bonuses to frontline workers in essential jobs through a refundable payroll tax credit. This hazard pay is supposed to serve as a complement rather than a replacement of the employer's responsibility to pay their workers. So let's break down how Patriot Pay works, who would qualify for the tax credit, and how employers would claim the credit. Now, according to the bill, this is how Patriot Pay works. For essential employees that make less than $50,000 annualized, employers would receive a 75% refundable payroll tax credit for a bonus up to $12 an hour. Now, for essential employees making over $50,000 annualized, the tax credit phases out by $24 for every additional $500 in income until annualized income hits $90,000. Now, the maximum tax credit is $1,440 per month per employee, meaning a full-time worker would receive up to $1,920 monthly bonus. So how it's working is 1/4 of this bonus would be paid by your employer and 3/4 would be paid by the federal government, funded by a refundable payroll tax credit that would come in the future. Now that we know the payout breakdown, let's find out who would actually qualify for Patriot Pay. Now, Congress and the Department of Labor in this situation would designate critical industries, including but not limited to hospitals, food distributors and processors, and health manufacturers. Now, eligible employers would have to certify that an employee worked in conditions that increase their potential COVID-19 exposure. And in this bill, it's still kind of in its early phases, so it doesn't really go into detail of what that certification looks like. So that's something we would have to look at. Okay, how do you designate that? Now, Eligible employers would qualify for tax credits for employee bonuses provided between May 1st and July 31st, 2020. Employees must work at least 100 hours each month. That way, they receive the bonus for their wages to be eligible for the tax credit. And I'm going to say that again to make sure we caught that. The temporary bonus of $12 an hour would only be in effect for the months of May, June, and July. And to qualify, you would need to work a minimum of 100 hours each month. All right, so those are kind of the requirements there. So if you're an employer, how would you claim the credit? Now, as an employer, you would submit a streamlined claim to the IRS using the recently created system that already advances the paid leave tax credit. And Congress would also provide the IRS the authority to partner with payroll companies who may be able to more quickly advance the credit, because we see the government's kind of slow. So sometimes private business is good. And here is an example that is presented by Mitt Romney and his team. A grocery store in Provo, Utah could opt into Patriot Pay to give their workers a $12 hour bonus. The employer would contribute $3, while the federal benefit would add $9, meaning a $10 hour worker would receive $22 per hour, and in totality, a $5,760 bonus from May 1st through the end of July. Now, the grocery store worker's weekly paycheck would include an extra $480 in this situation. All right, so let's get into my opinions and thoughts about this bill. And my opinions and thoughts are just that, guys, my opinions and thoughts. But those aren't the only opinions and thoughts that matter. Let me hear what your opinion is down in the comments. Do you think this is a good idea? If so, why? And if you don't think it's a good idea, what do you actually suggest we do? What have you heard that you like? All right, at face value, I believe this is a great idea, and an idea that even some members of the Democratic Party have tried introducing in earlier phases of the stimulus package. A similar plan that the Democratic Party is pushing for is called the Heroes Fund, which would provide a $25,000 per person subsidy for workers in essential services, from healthcare to the food industry and even delivery drivers, equivalent to a raise of an additional $13 per hour from the start of the public health emergency until December 31st, 2020. It also proposes a $15,000 recruitment incentive for health and home care workers and first responders to attract and secure the workforce needed to fight the public health crisis. So just a tad bit different. Now, one of the big things the Patriot Bill is trying to do is make sure that those people who are essential workers are making as much money or even more money than those that are currently on unemployment. Now, the way that the CARES Act was written has allowed some people to get more money by being unemployed than by continuing to work at their jobs, which provides no real incentive to even return to the workforce, and I don't necessarily blame them. Now, let's talk about some concerns and issues I have with this plan right now. So first off, what happens to the employee morale come August when they're no longer making that hourly bonus but the virus is still around? How do you determine who is and isn't a frontline worker? For example, at a grocery store, are the employees who stock the shelves at night considered essential workers, like those employees during the day around the big crowds? Is the store IT guy, security gal, or back office worker considered essential to make the operation run? And if not, what happens to the employee morale when someone realizes they're being paid less than others? You get where I'm going? Next, how many businesses could honestly afford right now to even chip in an extra $3 an hour per employee? Most businesses would probably have to pass the cost on to customers, meaning you and me, which sounds great for the business, but how are people financially struggling who aren't even employed right now or who aren't receiving Patriot Pay supposed to manage the price hike on goods that will certainly come? Now, another serious implication would be, do these big pay raises create inflation and make things a lot worse for the vast majority of people who aren't going to receive pay raises? Then the thing that really worries me about this tax credit is, as I already mentioned, can businesses really afford that right now? I'm sure a big box retailer could, but what I'm really concerned about is, what about all the small businesses that weren't able to receive any of the small business loans? If that's you, hit that like button and leave a comment down below. Now, we know Congress and the Department of Labor would designate what jobs qualify, but how exactly would they decide this? Now, what type of rubric would they use to determine who is an essential worker and who isn't? If the store clerk is essential, isn't the janitorial crew that cleans the grocery store at night? And isn't the truck driver who drops off the produce? And aren't the field workers picking the produce essential? Now, it's hard for me to imagine exactly how they would determine this, and unfortunately, I would imagine they would try to make this a very small group to avoid payouts. Now, another challenge is this plan is very limiting and disqualifying anyone over $90,000. So all those doctors who are surely making over $90,000 and who are putting in intense hours right now and literally risking their lives and the lives of their own families to help those who are sick wouldn't even see a dime of this Patriot Pay, which seems confusing to me because these health practitioners are literally patriots in the sense of supporting their country and fighting against the virus. So if I understand this right, the people who are literally on the front line and are heroes don't benefit. Now, my big challenge with this plan is it does nothing to help the majority of people out there who've been laid off or the small businesses who've had to shut their doors and let their employees go. So I do believe that a hero fund or a Patriot Pay type of legislation needs to be passed to provide for essential workers who are keeping this limping economy going and keeping us safe. And especially since people sitting at home unemployed are currently making more than they are, which kind of removes the incentive to even work during a crisis right now, and we need those people working. Now, I know some of you watching out there wish you could be back out at work, receiving a stable income again, or wish that you could open up your small business again. And for all of you and the majority of Americans, this bill won't do much for you unless you're an essential worker. If anything, it's just going to hurt you as businesses end up passing the cost on to you and me. Now, this is upsetting to me because 30 million Americans have filed for unemployment in the last 6 weeks. And if you're watching this and happen to be one of those who filed for unemployment, let us know down in the comments below and tell us if you were accepted or not. Now, a lot of the time we hear these large numbers, 30 million, and they're just that, large numbers. But those numbers represent a man or a woman who is unemployed, has a family to feed, a car payment, house mortgage, rent due, bills to pay, and insurance to worry about. So with the first quarter GDP drop of 4.8%, I don't believe everyone's saying that the economy is going to bounce back in quarter 3 and 4 because those 30 million Americans won't have any money to spend when things open back up because they'll be behind on so many payments. What people need now is money. So even though I do believe our essential workers should be receiving a hazard pay of some sort, this is not the bill that's going to save the rest of us out there. Now, I want to hear what you guys have to say about this bill down in the comments. I also want to know if you filed for unemployment and have been denied, or if you haven't been able to get through to your state office to even file for unemployment. Now, make sure to hit that like button so this video can spread through YouTube and get in front of those that need to see this information and how it may impact their lives. Now, right after you hit that like button, make sure to subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with everything going on with these stimulus packages. We'll continue to break down these bills and share how they actually impact you. So check out some of our other videos on the channel while you're here. Stay safe, Money Growth Academy, and I'll see you right in the next video.